Welcome back. Caddy Corner, episode 28. We're back outside. What's up, Caleb?
What's going on?
Not much, man. We're back. Hello, viewers. It's good to see you guys. This is the new and possibly improved outside set. So
Yeah, we sure hope so.
If you like it, let us know. The cables are definitely better organized than they usually are.
Our cables, you can't even see them.
And they probably don't care, but we care.
We look so much better.
We look so much better.
So much more organized.
Exactly.
We feel good.
And that kind of goes along with this episode.
Yeah.
Because we are doing a show that we did before again, and we're going to do it the right way this time.
Yes, we are.
This is Behind the Pod, baby.
Yes, it is.
So if you don't know, we have a podcast, you guys. So we're going to tell you kind of how that process goes from start to end to everything. I've got some mistakes that we've made throughout the time that we've been doing this thing. And then I also have a gear list for these beautiful people that we call viewers.
Yeah, I guess I kind of have a gear list too.
Okay, cool. Well, and it's easy because we use the same stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways, you can take it away if you want.
Okay. So for some of you who may know, may not know, I am basically the audio guy for Caddy Corner podcast. So my work includes recording the audio podcast, editing the audio podcast, and then posting the audio podcast. I have a pretty simple yet complex job. If it wasn't for the audio, podcast wouldn't be a thing.
It's true.
So my job is pretty important. So on my little notes here, I have a section for record, edit, and post.
Yeah, pretty much I have the same thing.
Okay. So I guess we could just go ahead and start with our record.
Sure. Well, one thing that I do have that you don't have on the list is pre-production, which is
I guess
ideating.
we should talk about pre-production first.
So that's all about, for us, coming up with the idea and doing the research or building a notes that we use every show. Because sometimes we have done podcasts where we don't have notes, and those have not been our best shows.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure the first episode that we did
of this was no notes.
No notes.
So it's all about making a show, basically and we've gotten to the point now where we've done we've done over 30 episodes technically, and so we basically plan for the edit. If we need to cut anything out, what sucks, what isn't, So building a good plan makes it so much easier in the recording process, also the editing process.
100%.
So, and also organizing your time slots and getting that anchored down, and if you're going to have guests, that's all pre-production stuff. So that's super important in any creative endeavor.
Yeah.
Number one, give yourself a due date, but number two, come up with a good plan.
Yeah.
So pre-production, for sure.
Definitely.
So important.
So important. This show would not happen if there was no pre-production. And before the show even came about, we took 3 months of just pre-production.
Yeah, thinking about
trying to come up
stuff.
with ideas that we can do just for future shows.
Gear.
What this was going to look like, what buying gear looked like, all that stuff goes into pre-production.
Yeah.
So it's so important, and we wouldn't be a thing without it.
For sure.
So now, once you get past the pre-production part, which is something that me and Austin love, but some people might not like that as good.
For sure.
But as I would say, recording is probably one of the most fun parts of anything.
You guys see the recording part of the show.
Yeah, this is the recording part. We came here to record this podcast, and that is how it is. So recording for me, I record everything into GarageBand as of this point in time. As I've talked about in previous shows, I do own the Adobe Creative Cloud, but I have not gotten my feet wet in Adobe Audition yet, so I don't feel comfortable recording the podcast in that.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, so as of right now, I'm still recording into GarageBand, which is
totally fine.
One of the best audio platforms or softwares in the game. It's very simple to use. A ton of people are really good at it, so YouTube is a great hand if you don't know how to do something or whatever.
And it's free if you have a Mac.
Yes, it's free. So I record all of my stuff into GarageBand. And for our soundboard, we record into a Behringer Q1220.
This is news to me, boys.
Q1202. Sorry.
I ordered this thing, and I don't even know what it's named.
It's called a Behringer Q1202. It's just a 4-input
audio mixer.
The runs what was it, $100, something like that.
Yeah, like 120 or something like that.
Uh,
Basically, the key, though, the whole point of the mixer is it is a way to transfer the microphone sound into USB form into the computer
to get into GarageBand.
And there are a lot of other ways that you can do that.
Yeah.
So these mics are also USB, which we'll talk about later. When the podcast kind of first came into the ideation of it, it was going to originally be a 4-man podcast.
Yep.
And so we don't have 4 USB ports, and that would have just been a nightmare. And so that's why we have that audio mixer, but it also gives us better control over what we sound like.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. So that's the soundboard that we use to record, and also the microphones that we're talking into right now are the Samson Q2Us.
that's right.
And these I've been so happy with these. So
They're
far.
really good.
The sound is real crispy.
Mhm.
I like it. And like you said, these do have the XLR port, which goes into our soundboard, which has a USB out that goes into the laptop. But these also have USB output straight from the microphone that you can run straight into a computer
with a USB.
And so that would make it super simple to be able to record a podcast if it's your first time, and especially if it's just you and one other person.
Yeah.
Every computer I've ever seen has 2 USB ports.
For sure.
Also,
too, they have a mic jack, so that way you can monitor yourself, which I'll definitely talk about down the line a little bit.
Yeah.
Because that's super important for getting good audio quality. So,
yeah, definitely. And so that is basically what we use to record. Usually a recording session for us goes, we come here and we meet, and usually we don't speak about what our main points are going to be in the podcast.
The past 5 or 6 shows we've done that.
And I think that I kind of like that, just so we're not saying the same exact thing. Because what we used to do is in our pre-production, we would
basically have the same questions.
We would come up with the same things that we were going to talk about, and then we would both talk about the same topics,
right,
instead of coming up with different topics, and then we would always just repeat what each other says, because me and Austin have the exact same brain.
Facts.
And so now recording goes, we meet here, and then we just plug it in, and then we hit record, and then we go. So that's what it looks like for us. That's what it looks like for me anyway, audio-wise. So you can go ahead and tell them what recording looks like for you.
I will do. Recording the video side of this podcast has recently changed.
Yes, it has.
And first of all, with that, I want to say sorry for some of the weird stuff that has been going on with the videos. It's a learning process, but in the last episode that you guys saw, I thought it looked too good to fully abandon the new camera rig that we are using. So there is that. But as far as recording the video goes, something that you guys, I don't think I've ever seen before, is synchronizing the audio and the video.
Yeah.
And so every single time that we started recording, I clap into the microphone just like this. And that lets me sync it up in Final Cut.
Yeah.
So if you don't do that, then you're going to be listening to your voice a lot and trying to follow your lips and like read lips and connect it all up, and that's not fun.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. And so that's something that we've always done, and it's worked really well for us. Another thing to kind of think about with the video side of it too, which we have always been working on, is making sure that everything looks good with lights and also with like what's on the table and stuff like that. And so I'm always very conscious of that. And so like lighting us up and making us look okay and trying to play with the god-awful window that has been in the back of our podcast since whenever.
Yeah.
So trying to figure that kind of stuff out. But right now, the camera that we're using is actually borrowed from my college. So in my major program, I can borrow this camera and tripod for as long as I want at any given time, basically. And so I actually don't know what kind of tripod it is, but it's like a big aluminum 60-inch heavy tripod. And then it is a Sony, I believe it's an NX80 camcorder on top of that. And we're not going to go into the nuance of that because you guys don't care that much, but just know that it is a camera now. Before that, we were using the iPhone camera, which is always great and is always a respectable thing to do. So as far as that kind of goes, though, just set it up and plug and play and record. The key is do not forget to clap, because then you are done for.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I guess, well, we'll talk about post-production in just a second. So we can. You ready to go to post-production?
Yeah, post-production.
Okay.
That's where we are
So
now.
for post-production, for me, for the video side of it, I use Final Cut for everything. As if you're a college student, you have a .edu email address. You can buy the Apple Pro App Suite for $200, and you have it for the rest of your life. I like to edit videos, and so Final Cut is my app of choice for that. And really, all that I do is sync up the audio, video, add the intro and outro, and the music. And for the actual podcast, that's kind of it.
Yeah.
And then there's the clips, obviously, which those just get subtitled and exported too. So
Yep.
it's fairly simple for me. I mean, it takes a lot of time, but it's fairly simple.
Yeah. So basically the same for me as with the video, but I record straight into GarageBand, which you already know. And so that means whenever I go to do my editing, I do all my editing in GarageBand too. So I can just edit straight off the file that I have recorded in the past, so I don't have to move it anywhere to be able to edit it or whatever. And so, like, personally, I use GarageBand for my audio editing, but you can use whatever you want to use if you want to start a podcast. Whatever you feel comfortable with, that's what you should go for. Whatever you feel good.
There's tons of options too.
There's so many different audio editing platforms out there that are really good. And so I do the same thing. I get the audio, I trim it up, and then I slap on the intro and outro, and then that's basically it for the editing portion of the podcast. Again, like, it takes time. You have to listen to the podcast a couple times just while you edit it, but, you know, it's just one of those things.
That's right. For sure. And I think, too, another thing to kind of think about is whenever we first started the podcast, we would cut a lot of it out because of mistakes or fumbling of words, or we said one part of it that was totally incoherent. Now, 30-some episodes in, we've been able to kind of fix that, and so that doesn't happen really ever. If there are hard cuts in the podcast, it's generally because of interruption or because of, like, somebody has, like, a really hard time saying a word or something like that. So there's not a lot of cuts is basically what I'm saying now in comparison to the first part of it.
Definitely,
so you'll like, our editing process is fairly smooth, but that's because we've gotten good at recording.
Yeah.
So, and also pre-production.
Yeah.
It all goes together.
It really does.
It all goes together.
It's a puzzle.
It is. It is a puzzle for sure. My next tab is distribution. Is that what yours is too? Okay, cool. So obviously for the video side of it, where else does video live on the internet other than YouTube? So shout out to YouTube. I post, obviously, every single podcast to YouTube. It then gets titled, thumbnailed, description written, all of that kind of stuff. Usually an upload for me takes about an hour, 50-ish minutes, something like that. And so in that time, I have time to write the title, make the thumbnail, which obviously I built our beautiful thumbnail template that we are using currently, and so it's very much plug and play for that.
Yep.
Write the description, which I really like doing sometimes, but also sometimes I hate doing it.
Yeah, it's love-hate relationship.
Yeah, it is. But it's also sometimes really fun. And then one of the big parts in the distribution phase is making sure that you link everything in the description and stuff like that, and then also after the podcast is posted is like posting it on your socials, so throwing up like your IG stories or our TikToks and stuff like that. So
definitely.
That's pretty much it for distribution, at least.
Yeah. So for me, I will export the GarageBand file to an ACC file, which is just the basic audio MP3 file. And then I upload the audio file into this app called Anchor, which is what we use to post the audio to all the different audio platforms. And so then after I upload the audio file into Anchor, then I get the chance to title the podcast, write a description, put the show notes all in there. And then also on Anchor, there's some different options that you can do. You can add some polls to your podcast that we'll post on Spotify. You can add questions like Q&A type things on Spotify podcast too. And so if you don't know, Anchor is through Spotify podcast
primarily.
But, whenever you post on Anchor, you can also post to Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Google Podcasts,
Amazon.
Yeah.
There's one called Pocket Cast is very popular.
Yeah.
All of them,
And so then after you fill in all the stuff that you want to fill in, then all you do is
schedule it.
Yeah, we schedule before we actually get to the day that you have to post it, because our podcast comes up
in the morning.
At the same time every week. And so a couple days before. You just schedule it to post, and then boom,
Boom.
hit the post button, and it comes up on our
That's
first
right.
time.
And like the most of the like work in the distribution phase is figuring out how to make your podcast or your show meet your audience's expectations, and also how do you make it appeal to them.
Yeah.
So that's where like the title and the thumbnail and stuff like that goes along with these, and then also like posting it on the socials and stuff like that. So definitely not the most like flashy phase, but it is the phase where you guys get to actually see what we do all week.
Exactly.
So we don't just sit around.
No, we don't.
So
So I guess you could consider this just sitting around.
that is true. I think I might have set ourselves up for that one. Yeah, out here in the sun. This is like the first hot day in
Dude,
a while.
It's so hot out here today.
Yeah, as compared to the past little while, it is crazy. But tomorrow it's going to be like 70 or something, or like 60. Off topic, did you see that there's like an Arctic super wave coming down from the north? Okay, they're going to see like sub-freezing temperatures in Kentucky, which is like just a little bit away from us. So anyhow, that's what I have for the process. I have some other stuff that I want to talk about, obviously.
Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So the next kind of chunk that I want to jump into is I have some kind of ideologies that we have for every podcast that we have. One big thing with doing anything on the internet is building a consistent brand, and so that's something that we've had to stick to, mostly because everybody that listens to our podcast, with some exceptions, you can go through our entire catalog, and you're still interested in the same kind of stuff that we talk about in every show. So that's kind of the point. And so our overall kind of general through line, everything that happens in the podcast, is every show we try and bring value to a general group of people. So that general group of people for us is, referred to as your target demographic. And for us, that's probably 18 to 25.
Yeah.
College student vibe.
Young adult.
Yeah. So that's usually our target audience, which is the majority of those people. And then in the episodes that we make a lot of the time, or even sometimes we'll do specialized episodes like this, it's for a targeted niche that we bring the value to.
Yeah.
This episode is very much going to be very helpful for creators or anybody that's just interested in the behind the scenes of the podcast generally. So those are basically the two ways that we come up with ideas for the show is how can we bring value to a general audience, or how can we bring a lot of value to a more niche audience. Yeah,
definitely.
So, and that's fairly simple to understand. That's basically how every idea gets made.
Yeah.
But it's kind of it's a concept that maybe a lot of people don't know about. You just you have to give people a reason to watch your stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that is our reason. And then kind of one of our big points that we really try and do with a lot of different things, such as the episode 30 Q&A that's coming up. So hit that, or our giveaway on our last show. That's going to stay up on the link tree for a couple more days if you're watching this. So anyways, we have to relate to our community and, give them experiences and examples that show that we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
This is a very good example because we're doing a show called Behind the Pod on a podcast. So therefore, we must know what we're talking about in that regard somehow. Indeed. So those are kind of basically the ideas that we, generally have whenever we're just living through the brand that we're working on, is bringing value to a general audience or a targeted, audience with a more specific value set. And then how do we relate to those people and how do we make them relate to us? That is basically how we think about it. All right, so the next section that I want to jump into here is some mistakes that we've made along the way. If you can believe it, audience, we are not perfect.
Dang.
We've made some mistakes along the way.
Really thought we got them.
Yeah, I thought we did too. But at least we got them for 28 episodes.
Yeah.
So that's a W. Episode 1 is a living, breathing mistake.
Literally.
And so a lot of mistakes were made in that show with misunderstanding equipment. Also, nobody, I don't think, was wearing headphones.
Mm-hmm.
And so that process in podcasting and probably just in production in general is called monitoring, which is where I have these headphones plugged into the mixer and I'm hearing everything that you guys are going to be able to hear as we post the show, basically. Whatever's coming out of the mixer, I'm able to hear it. And so that way, if there's any loud crashes, or if somebody's mic is turned off, or if a cable's not fully plugged in, or if there's some static or something crazy, we can avoid that just initially.
Oscar, come on with the heat.
Coming with the heat. What an interesting creature. He does not like farmers.
Word.
What a beast. my God, what a beast.
Man, he is killing it.
He is killing it. I can just keep going. It's no big deal. Okay. So another kind of mistake that I think that we've made, and we definitely still make it, is lacking a little bit in organization.
Oh, yeah.
So like we've talked about on the pod before, definitely after hours. Like we usually come up with podcast ideas like a couple of days before and stuff like that. And at the beginning of the podcast, whenever we needed to be more organized, we would use Notion for everything and stuff like that. And being organized is really obviously super powerful. We've done a lot of podcasts on that.
Yeah.
So that's just something that, always to consider. If you take anything away from us, do not take away our organization and strategies like that.
Unless you want to.
With the podcast, though, about specific, like if you look at our podcast Notion, it has not been touched in months.
Yeah, that's true.
But if, sometimes people if you need a strong, rigid structure and stuff like that, there's tons of options for that. Caleb and I have worked together on a lot of stuff, and so we're able to just kind of turn stuff around quickly.
Yeah.
But not everybody's like that. So that's why I'm saying don't take our advice all the time on that because, we know what we're doing.
Yeah, we're a minority.
Exactly. Because we're able to just sometimes work without a plan, but not everybody is. And then kind of the last thing that I want to talk about is I want to talk about some of the more miscellaneous and random gear that we use on the podcast that people would not think of.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of little strange things that we have that you wouldn't definitely not think of whenever you're building your podcast gear set of things.
Yeah.
So talking about the mixer, so I am monitoring the podcast right now through my headphones. And you guys know what a headphone, jack plug looks like normally, but a mixer does not have one of those normally. And so what a mixer has is called quarter-inch inputs, which are, instrument inputs, but also just what the mixer has built into it. And so I bought a quarter-inch to headphone jack adapter, plug it in, you got a headphone jack. Fairly simple.
Yep.
But you definitely wouldn't think about that. There's two of us. We need a splitter. Got one of those too. This is a very long headphone jack adapter cable that I was going to use for something, and now I have it.
Yep.
Basically, though, you're going to need adapters and dongles.
Oh, yeah. Another adapter that we use all the time is the adapter from USB-A to USB-C
Every day.
Plug the
mixer
cable into the laptop because my laptop does not have a USB-A, it has USB-C, so we have to have that adapter.
Facts.
One thing that you probably wouldn't think about.
Definitely.
But you need it.
Yeah, definitely got to have it. Another thing that we use on all of our podcasts, for the most part, is our iPads.
Yep.
Or some kind of notes.
Yeah.
But I think I've always used my iPad. Your new iPad team. But regardless, I always have my iPad here, so that way if I need to hit a quick Google search, I got that.
Yeah.
If I need my notes, I got that. If I need to respond to a text quickly, I got that. But just whatever it is that you have all of your ideas for the podcast written down on, make sure to have that handy because otherwise it is doing you no good. That's right. Another thing that we have for the podcast that you maybe wouldn't think of too is we have kind of a weird amount of lights in the set sometimes. So, we have lights that in the most recent podcast that you guys saw, we had like a light in the background that was helping help out some of the shadows. We have big lights for lighting up the set and stuff like that. Something that you definitely wouldn't think of for a podcast, but in the world that we live in now, you have to be on video. So that's why we're here doing video stuff.
Indeed.
And then another thing that is important about podcasting too is if you go for a long time, your mouth is going to get dry.
Yeah.
So stay hydrated. Normally I have water on set. Today I have this lemon lime prime, and I don't even know if you guys can see it, but hopefully you guys can. So that's kind of all that I have. Do you have anything else? Do you have any mistakes that you remember us having that I didn't say?
I just think the biggest one that a mistake that we've been making in the past, which we just talked about this the other day, is not doing our meetings we
facts.
should be doing.
Yeah.
I think being a part of the organization process is meeting, not just on recording day.
Talking about it.
Yeah. Being able to sit together, iPads open, pencils in hand, just brainstorming or whatever a meeting consists of, or maybe it's just we sit and have a conversation about what we want the future to look like or what we want the next episode to look like or whatever. Just something like that is so important just so that it's not so last minute whenever we come here and press record.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. But yeah, that's kind of it. What I want to end this show on is I want to end it on a number one tip for people that are going to watch this podcast and then decide that they want to start a podcast.
Okay.
So I will go first because I know that that's tough for you because I haven't thought about this.
Yeah.
Okay. So my number one tip is figure out your workflow.
Mm-hmm.
There are tons of podcasts out there that you can, look up their YouTube channels and figure out what they're all about. Some podcasts, groups will record 4 podcasts in one day and they're done for the month. Some of us, like us, will record every single week because it's what works best for us.
Yeah.
Everybody is different. Maybe you sound bad into this mic, but we sound good into this mic. Nothing is blanket statemented because you're in the creative world as a podcast host. You might not think it. This isn't artsy over here. This is fairly industrial, actually, but there is creative, nuance that goes into that, and using your brain efficiently is so important. So you have to find your workflow that works best in order to, number one, not hate making a podcast, and number two, do it successfully.
Yeah. I think I'm going to give 2 pieces of advice here. My first little piece of advice is to find someone who is doing what you want to do, and then try
Replicate.
To mirror that.
Yeah.
Not exactly.
No.
Don't try and be exactly what they are, because we don't need like seconds of the greats.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But that's a really good point.
Just find somebody who's doing what you want to be doing, and somebody who gives good advice to the target audience that you want to be able to give advice to, and then try to mirror their lifestyle and try and mirror their creative style or whatever. But also with that, my last piece of advice here is just be yourself. Don't try and fake a personality for the internet or anything. Like, dude, whenever I say me and Austin come here and we are just like 2 dudes that just love what we do and like we love talking about it,
it's fully authentic.
That is exactly what we are.
Yeah.
All we are is we come here and we just talk about what we love, and that's one of the reasons why I think we bring some of the best content. But also, it's just so much easier to just be yourself instead of trying to put on a mask or whatever just to try and impress the people who are listening or whatever. So I think those are 2 pieces of advice that I would give to anybody, not in just podcasting, but anything in the creative or content creation field. Just make sure that you are being yourself, because people respect
authenticity.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agree. Couldn't have said it better myself. But that's going to pretty much wrap up this episode of Caddy Corner Behind the Pod 2.0.
Yeah.
Like 1,000 times better than the first one that we did.
Yeah, I think so anyway.
Yeah, so if you guys, seriously, we've said this in a lot of podcasts, but not all of them. But if you guys if you want to start a podcast, if you need help, if you have questions, if you have anything like that, feel free to reach out because we will respond, because we have no problem answering those questions.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for.
Totally.
So definitely feel free to do that. Our DMs are always open. Just hit us up, tell us what you need, and we will help you out as best we can.
Yep.
Second of all, hopefully you go out and start a podcast, or just start creating some kind of content, or just do something that gets your brain going. Maybe you're good at drawing, whatever. We talked about this a lot too. Just get creative. It's super good for your brain.
Mm-hmm.
But with that being said, make sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And I'm hoping that we are going to be able to polish up all of the weird production problems in this episode. If not, you will never see this camera ever again. Yeah, it is cool. Like the iCarly camera for those of you watching.
Yeah,
listening.
It's a cool looking camera.
Yeah, it is a cool looking camera. But if you're on the audio, make sure to rate and review the show. We read every single new review that we have. Speaking of, I have not looked today. Have you?
No, I have not.
I will look quickly if there's a new review. Again, why do we not get notified of this if there is?
That's what I'm saying.
But nope, it's just my boy Dragon Slayer still staying at the top of the list here. So leave us a review. We'll read it on the show. Anything else that I'm missing? I don't think so. I'm going to leave the free daily planner from last week's episode up on the link tree until Sunday after this episode comes out, so it'll be up for 10 days. I feel like that's a reasonable amount of time for you guys. So if you want that coming down to the wire, just go get it.
Yeah.
It's dope, and it's free, so you might as well.
Yeah, might as well.
That's right. So thanks so much for listening. It means a ton, seriously. throw us up on your story if you are really about it, and especially if you're this deep into the episode. With that being said, good luck on your midterms. It's probably about that time for most of you guys, or it's a little bit after, or it's fall break or something like that. So flying by. But that's it for episode 28 of Caddy Corner. I'm Austin. He's Caleb. We are back every Friday on this show. On audio, we are back every Wednesday for After Hours, which is our best stuff. And we will see you guys next week.
Peace.